Chapter 74. Days went by after the bout between Demon Lord Guy Crimson and the first hero Rudra Nazca. Valgrind and the others had returned to their tasks, their visitation over. Rimuru, however, was genuinely intrigued by Rudra's potential. He felt something strange about the hero that he couldn't quite understand. So he left a parallel existence, weaker than most of his other selves, to remain and train the blonde man. For the record, I'll only accept Veldanava as my one true master and mentor, Rudra said, swinging his sword to get a better feel. He turned towards his sparring partner, the silver primordial that he had managed to gain interest in. The demon stood calmly, his posture more lackluster than even Guy Crimson's, with a sword in his hand, a mere creation from Magicules. That's fine by me. It would have felt weird if you did actually, Rimuru mused, squinting his eyes to thoroughly examine Rudra. From his external body to his spirit and down to his very soul, he couldn't see anything weird. Were his intuition and instincts bringing him false alarms? Was the uneasiness he felt unfounded? Shaking his head to clear his mind, Rimuru began helping Rudra improve his swordsmanship. The blonde was already a master on his own, especially with Veldanava personally mentoring him. The limit of his powers was only hindered by his own potential. Guy loves to do this, so make sure to remember it, Rimuru said, taking a large swing aimed to slice Rudra in half. The swing was met with Rudra's sword, though the full brunt of the force sent him backward several meters. The sword saved your life, Rimuru frowned. The only reason Rudra had survived and had confidence in blocking the attack was the durability of his sword. Don't take it for granted, the sword is only helping you. It doesn't do everything. Yes. Rudra's simple affirmation was all he could muster as Rimuru continued the training. Rimuru seems really eager, Veldanava laughed, the person beside him giggling softly. Is it fine for the king and his sister to be out here in the middle of nowhere for several weeks? He mused as he stared at the king's sister. She froze for a bit, then gave a small mischievous smile, akin to that of a child who's done a prank. Everything should be fine. Her tone was more of an inquiry than a statement of reassurance. The Prime Minister of Nazca is the real one managing everything. Or more like, Brother Rudra dumps all the work onto poor Sir Damrata. Her gaze swam, expecting Veldanava to judge both her and her brother for their irresponsibility. Except he didn't judge. Ha ha ha, Rudra never fails to surprise me. Seeing Veldanava's hearty laugh, she couldn't help but laugh too. The ambiance was sweet and serene, a moment just for the two of them. I wonder what they are talking about over there. Rudra, sitting on the ground taking a short break, couldn't help but observe as he heard their laughter. Must be nice to just relax there. Hey, can't I join the… Rudra felt danger and rolled sideways, looking over to see a deep sword slash where he had been sitting. Rimuru, his sword still in the position of his swing, snickered at Rudra's comment. Ha, we aren't done here. If you want to lose to Guy, then go and relax. Otherwise, stand up and let's continue the spar. Rimuru prepared his sword, not even waiting for Rudra's answer. As he sparred with Rudra, he kept observing the two a little bit away from them. Seeing their small developments and bonding, he couldn't help but crack a small smile for Veldanava. Rimuru and Rudra kept sparring for the next few days, with Lucia and Veldanava nearby, watching them while they chatted. Rimuru made sure to keep the hero occupied at all times so that he wouldn't spoil the mood the two were creating. Hey Veldanava, we're going to Nazca, Rimuru announced as he held Rudra by the scruff of his neck. Rudra whined, protesting against returning just yet. From what I hear, this idiot is being irresponsible in his duty as king. He brought Rudra to face Veldanava, the blonde turning his head sideways to look at the star dragon with pleading eyes. That's fine with me. What about you, Lucia? Veldanava turned to the woman who was giggling at her brother's predicament. Won't you need to come with him as well? He made sure his tone didn't hint at any yearning for her to remain and chat some more. Lucia turned from her brother to Veldanava and then back to her brother. I think I'll stay here for a few more days. Veldanava-sama has been teaching me about magic theory and advising me on my skills. She scratched her cheek and turned her face away, seeing the look of betrayal on Rudra's face. Skills, huh? Rimuru was slightly curious. Unlike Rudra, who gave off an uncanny feeling, Lucia never elicited that sensation. Although he felt something when they first met, it disappeared right after he noticed it. Can you tell me Gah, Lucia, wait, don't abandon me. Damrata will have my neck if I return now. Rudra screamed as Rimuru kept him in place. Why would you care anyway? Do you know how hard it is to manage a kingdom? I need a break too. He complained, glaring at Rimuru. Annoyed by his interruption, Rimuru retorted, "Shut up. It is because I understand that I am bringing you back." With Rimuru's words, the two disappeared, leaving Veldanava and Lucia to continue their conversation about her ultimate skill. Rimuru and Rudra returned to the Nazca kingdom, ensuring that the king fulfilled his duties. "Rimuru, this is so boring," Rudra grumbled as he laid his head on the table in his office. Rimuru sat in one of the chairs, reading a book from the castle's library. "And it will continue to be so if you don't finish that paperwork." "Damrata is close and is bringing more," Rimuru countered without looking away from the book. It was about the history of the Nazca kingdom, and nearby were other books on the kingdom's literature and culture. Rudra's face was full of dread as he scratched his head with both hands. "I can't. This is too much even for me." As he continued to fake sob, a knock on the door was heard, making him flinch in fear. "Your Majesty," Damrata entered without waiting for a response, bowing to Rimuru, who gave a small nod in reply. He walked toward Rudra, holding a large stack of paperwork. Rudra was pissed at Damrata's smirk. To add to his tension, it felt like Damrata was purposefully walking slowly towards him, making sure the documents were in full view. "Rudra-sama, here are the things you need to sign. These are last week's paperwork." Placing it on the table, already covered with other documents, the table's surface was no longer visible. "I will bring this week's paperwork tomorrow. Please finish this by the end of the day." Rudra frowned, wanting to escape as he usually did by transport magic, leaving all the work to Damrata. He turned to Rimuru, who had placed a large anti-magic area on the castle and was sitting in the office to make sure Rudra couldn't escape. Rimuru had also confiscated his sword and armor, only to be returned after all the work was finished. "Rimuru-sama," Damrata bowed to the primordial silver, "would you like some tea?" He asked politely, speaking to the most important guest he had ever met. "I could have the chef make some snacks to complement it as well. We have a variety of sweets and teas, please choose whatever you like." Damrata began listing the plethora of dishes and beverages to Rimuru. The Prime Minister of the Great Nazca Kingdom was doing the menial task of serving someone with snacks and tea. It would leave shock expressions to those to see it. After Rimuru gave his choices, Damrata bowed and went to the door. "Hey, aren't you gonna ask me?" Rudra complained, having been ignored the whole time. "Ah yes," Damrata, who seemed to have planned it all for this moment, gave Rudra a polite smile. "I assumed that Rudra-sama does not need it until he finishes all his tasks. The tea might spill on the documents, after all." He then left the room. Rudra cursed Damrata in his mind, knowing this was just revenge for all the times he had shirked his responsibilities, leaving the necessary work to him. "I'll get you back for this," he murmured as he began working on his paperwork. "Lucia, the city nearby here seems to be famous for their sweets," Veldanava suggested as they chatted the day away. "Let's go there." Lucia's expression lit up at his words. "My gratitude, Veldanava-sama," she bowed, and they began their journey to the city. Veldanava frowned slightly, a look that didn't escape Lucia's notice. "You don't have to be that formal with me, Lucia. You and your brother don't need to use honorifics with me." His voice carried a hint of loneliness, indicating his displeasure at the distant way she addressed him. Understanding his sentiment, Lucia nodded. "My apologies, I understand, Veldanava. Sorry." She gave a sheepish smile with a hint of a blush, not used to speaking informally to the creator. Veldanava smiled and nodded in approval. After some time, they arrived in the city. It was just an hour before twilight, and the streets were not as busy as they could have been. They found a seat in one of the well-known cafes in the area, famous for its sweets and delicious teas and other beverages suited to all tastes. A waitress approached, her hair a luxurious cascade of deep chestnut waves styled in a thick, intricate braid reaching her lower back. A few soft, loose strands framed her face, adding a playful and approachable touch. "What can I get for you too?" she asked with a smile, holding a small notepad. Veldanava raised a brow in suspicion, but the waiter simply returned a confused smile. Veldanava looked to Lucia, who was reading through the menu with starry eyes. "This place has more variety than even ours." Her mumbling was heard by Veldanava, who chuckled at her adorable actions. After giving their order, the waitress noted it down and bowed, leaving the two to prepare their orders. "I guess this is your first time in this city," Veldanava said, leaning on his arm that rested on the table, staring at Lucia who was humming eagerly, waiting for her sweets. Realizing she wasn't alone, Lucia blushed. "We only ever really leave Nazca to hunt down monsters or for my brother's impulsive travels." She gave a dry laugh as she explained. Then you should enjoy this, Veldanava said. From what I can tell, Rimuru will shackle Rudra until everything is done in the kingdom of Nazca. A few days might be an understatement, assuming he really does dump his work onto others. He glanced at her, waiting for her confirmation. Fufu, then I can really enjoy my time here, she giggled softly, covering her mouth with her right hand. Brother Rudra will probably remain there for a while and do things sluggishly. She knew her brother well, and doing something he disliked always resulted in slow efficiency from him. As they chatted away, their orders finally arrived. A different waiter, a man with long platinum hair, brought their food. An array of pastries was laid on the table, along with their drinks. The man bowed and left to continue his work, Veldanava's gaze following him until he was out of sight. So sweet, Lucia exclaimed as she tasted one of the dishes. Veldanava, watching her enjoy the sweets, momentarily forgot his earlier suspicions, focusing instead on the pleasant moment he was sharing with her. Lucia became bashful, realizing Veldanava was staring at her as she enjoyed her food. Aren't you going to eat too? She asked adorably, tilting her head to the side. She finished the pastry in her hand and wiped her mouth with a napkin. It's a bit embarrassing being watched while eating, she uttered, attempting to hide her crimson face by turning to the side, only emphasizing that her blush spread to her ears. So cute. Veldanava could only scream internally at how adorable his soon-to-be wife was. His face remained calm with a tiny smile at her words, making sure not to let out the emotions running rampant in his mind about how cute Lucia was acting. Meanwhile, 3 people were observing them. 2 were the chestnut and platinum-haired waiters, and the third was a customer with long, crimson hair sitting at the table next to them. How did it go with the local lord? The woman asked the crimson-haired customer telepathically using thought communication. The customer sipped his tea as if he were merely minding his business while replying. He was more than willing to cooperate. We just have to make sure everything is done in order. Good, Femina, we'll leave it up to you then. The platinum-haired man turned to his companion, who nodded in acknowledgement. They observed Veldanava and Lucia until they were done with their meals and seemingly preparing to leave. The chestnut-haired waitress walked up to them with a smile. Would I assume the couple is done with their meal? She inquired, looking at the 2, who had opposite reactions to her words. The male seemed to have a composed expression with a hint of nervousness as he looked at his female companion, while the female customer had a look of embarrassment. Oh, we're just companions, Veldanava replied to the waitress, placing the money on the table as he answered. The waitress made a shocked expression, then quickly apologized. Forgive my rudeness. I assumed you came here for the festival happening tomorrow evening. She covered her face with her hand in a gesture of surprise and shame for jumping to conclusions. Lucia looked at the girl with beaming eyes akin to a child's. A festival is being held tomorrow. She almost jumped out of her seat with excitement. Veldanava couldn't help but be curious if she was more sheltered than he expected. Yes, the waitress replied with glee. It seemed a bit abrupt, though, it was just announced earlier this morning. That's why it will be happening tomorrow night. Luckily, it is a 5-day festival, or so the rumors say, she mentioned in a whispering manner. I can't wait, Lucia happily exclaimed. Veldanava, I'll be staying here for a few more days. I doubt brother will need my help in the castle anyway, also Lucia spoke in rapid succession. Easy now, Lucia, the festival won't go anywhere, Veldanava gestured, trying to keep cool and not show his excitement about their prolonged date. Having seen Milam from Rimuru's memories, albeit only a small fraction, he could see where their daughter got such vigor from. It's not like I'll be going anywhere, we can see it all together. He shrugged, pretending to remain nonchalant. Inside the castle of Nazca, Rimuru, this is too much work. Rudra flopped his head on the table, with Rimuru staring into space with a smile. Then do it tomorrow, Rimuru finally answered after closing his eyes and opening them again, watching the king of Nazca. If you finish it all up, I'll teach you some of Guy's attack patterns, and we can march to the north for a rematch. Motivated by this promise, Rudra continued his tasks, oblivious to everything happening around him. Sir Rimuru. Everything is going according to plan so far. The voice belonged to Femina of Lovers, in Citadel's Arcana, serving under Testarossa. With her were Lendis of Balance, serving under Carrera. Good, then make sure their dates go as smoothly as possible. Rimuru drank his tea as he flipped through a page of a new book he was reading. This amount of bonding should be useful for him to make a good impression and have memorable experiences with her, without her brother in the fray. Dot dot dot. Dot 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 dot. Meanwhile in Citadel, Rimuru walked through the bustling corridors of a research lab in Advanza, a world used by both the main scientist and engineer of the Citadel as their primary research facility. This facility was located within Darwin, the half where Jahil was placed and where all biological advancement happens. Lilith's side was dubbed with the name of Alset, where all mechanical advancement happens. Gnomes, demons, high humans, and other creatures moved around Rimuru, carrying vials of various fluids or pushing carts loaded with organic materials to designated rooms. As Rimuru neared Jahil's workspace, he noticed some of the old critters designed by Lilith. Their bodies had become sleeker, and their mechanical parts more suited for delicate tasks. Rimuru's lips curled into a slight smile, appreciating the improvements. Entering the observation room, Rimuru watched Jahil through a glass pane. Jahil was dissecting a creature adapted to a dark world, devoid of visual organs but equipped with advanced hearing and smell, functioning like sonar and echolocation. Rimuru waited patiently, recalling an incident when Lilith had burst in during a similar procedure, causing Jahil to accidentally slice through his test subject. Rimuru chuckled softly at the memory. Once Jahil finished, he cleaned himself up and joined Rimuru in a nearby conference room. The room's polished, professional appearance contrasted sharply with the rest of the lab, surprising Rimuru, who had expected a clutter similar to Lilith's workspace. "So, what can I do for you, boss?" Jahil asked, his voice steady but his eyes betraying a hint of anxiety. Rimuru sat down, his expression serious. "I have some good news and bad news." He noticed Jahil breaking into a cold sweat at the mention of bad news, as if anticipating a reprimand. Rimuru took note of that as he began talking. Luminos killed Twilight just earlier. Jahil froze. The air around him crackled with a sudden surge of murderous intent and magicules, shattering the room's walls and causing significant damage outside. "She did she now?" he growled, his voice dripping with venom. "Yes, Twilight finally managed to make her snap," Rimuru said, sighing as he looked around at the destruction. The room, made of the strongest materials, was barely holding together under Jahil's uncontrolled fury. Rimuru subtly reinforced the structural integrity with his own magicules. He turned to Jahil, who was gritting his teeth, his aura radiating a mix of rage and grief. "As much as you want to avenge Twilight, I can't have you kill Luminos," Rimuru said firmly, meeting Jahil's wrathful gaze. "I knew this would happen, which is why I have this for you." He presented a soul on his palm with a proud expression. This is," Jahil stammered, recognizing the soul's origin. "Twilight, how? I thought Luminos killed him." Jahil turned to Rimuru, who wore a smug expression. "I knew you'd hold a grudge, so I took it before she managed to kill him," Rimuru explained. "This way, you don't have to hold any grudges because I saved Twilight already." He gestured proudly, emphasizing his foresight. "Thank you, boss," Jahil said, handling the soul with reverence. "Really, I appreciate it." He turned to Rimuru and bowed. "Deeply." "Stop that, it feels weird seeing you do it," Rimuru scoffed, a hint of amusement in his voice. Jahil laughed, the tension easing. "And here I thought you came because of that incident." Rimuru's brows furrowed in confusion. "Incident? What incident?" Jahil tilted his head, puzzled. "You know, the one where equipment, test subjects, and other stuff have been going missing in Darwin." Rimuru's eyes widened in shock. Wait, since when? This is very important information. Why didn't you report this?" His voice was furious, and his magicules flared with his anger. Jahil stiffened, sweating profusely. "It was discovered about a year ago, I think. I never really get out much to know the date these days. Anyway, I had a gnome mention this to Lilith since she's always holed up. The reply I got was that she'd report it herself. Considering nothing changed, I thought you shelved the problem. No report came to me about this." Rimuru gritted his teeth in frustration. To be continued.